Hi, thanks for joining me to watch this short video on hiding. Hiding is one of the four H's. Um, I spoke previously about hesitating. Hiding is the next part of the cycle of the four H's. And hiding comes into play when we feel overwhelmed by our goal, overwhelmed by the thing that we are wanting so desperately to move towards. And sometimes that overwhelm can be linked to a fear of what other people might be thinking about what we do, fear of letting people down, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being entitled to do the thing that we want because their needs are more important than our needs. And so what we do is we start to display certain behaviours when we're hiding. The most classic one is avoid. So even though we know up here, perhaps in here, we have a dream, as soon as we start to consider what it will take to get to that place, we just shut it down. We avoid anything that might create conflict or fear around that. And we procrastinate. That is an absolute classic, and I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a minute. We also shrink back inside ourselves. You know, we all have so much potential. We come into this world with so much potential. I absolutely believe that. We are all capable of so much. And yet we become confined and caged by our fears. And so we stay where we are. We shrink back. We become really small. And a characteristic of hiding is being quiet, not speaking up, not standing up for ourselves, not saying what we really want. And this can be linked to this big dream being so overwhelming. The fact that it's overwhelming is our excuse to not act. I can't do it. It's just too much. The change is too big. We feel paralyzed. We are in freeze mode when we're hiding. So even though we can identify that dream, even though it might be something that we lay in bed at night, or, when we're in the car or for a walk or drifting off into space in our heads, and we think, you know what, I really wish I could do that thing. We don't create a plan around it because that feels like too much to think about. And it's too overwhelming, and so we hide. We go inside, we shut it down, and we don't take the actions. So we shrink back from the opportunity. We ignore opportunities. The signs are there all the time from the universe, whether that's in something you might read or something you could hear on the radio or conversations with friends or people who you could potentially connect with. You just shrink back from it. You play it small. You keep yourself hidden because you're worried about judgment. You're worried about looking like a fool. You're worried that you don't deserve it. You're worried about disappointing other people. And so your needs are not met. Now, being self-aware is, of course, the first step to making any change. And I'm not here to tell you that change is easy. Change takes a lot of work. The first thing to do is notice when you're getting in your own way. So I have some questions that I'd like you to sit down and think about and answer these questions. So first of all, when you are hiding, what areas are you hiding from? To get quite specific, when you feel those blockers coming up inside, what were you thinking about? What were you doing that made you retreat? So just notice what that is. And then I'd like you to think about, what is the fear then that sits behind that? What are you really worried about? What's going on in your gut? What makes your heart skip a beat when you think about that? What makes your mind go racing off at tangents when you think about that thing? What is that fear specifically? When you've identified that single fear or 100 fears, I'd like you to then look at them and ask yourself, honestly, does that fear matter? And you may tell yourself yes, you may tell yourself no on reflection. When you find a fear that you've said yes, it matters, I'd like you to ask yourself again, does it actually matter? And if it does actually matter, what could you do about it? So for example, let's say that you want to change your job and you're worried because you don't know whether that new role, or perhaps you want to set up your own business, you have no idea whether that's going to be successful. Of course you want it to be, but no one knows what's in the future. And your fear might be around your financial security. It might be that you have to move to a new place in order to get this role, which might mean uprooting your whole family in order to go there. Or you might be a long way from a support network. You might be a long way from friends. So what could you actually do to mitigate that risk? Because a great thing to do is you can almost create your own risk register, if you like. So here's the risk. This is my mitigation. And you could also rank it in terms of what the likelihood is of it actually happening. But if you've gone through the scenarios and you come up with solutions, so for example, if you did want to set up a business for yourself, perhaps a sensible thing to do would be to have a part-time job to support the change, so that not all your eggs are in that one basket, if that is the fear that sits behind it. So once you've come up with your mitigations, I want you to kind of do a little bit more analysis, which is when you're procrastinating about this dream, what behaviours are you demonstrating? How are you actually being? What's actually going on? Is it that you suddenly start spending 8 hours a day scrolling through social media, for example, as a way of not applying yourself to your dream? Maybe you use food as a distraction, or maybe you use alcohol as a distraction, or maybe you go out for an enormously long run as a distraction. It could be anything, but just what is that behaviour? And then I want you to ask yourself, what do you really, really want? What is the dream? Okay, the big dream, the big goal, the thing that you are really wanting in your heart, but avoiding, hiding from. And then I want you to attempt to break this down into between 5 and 10 sub goals. So what do you need? What small steps can you take to get to the big goal? Because breaking it down into smaller steps takes away the overwhelm, is usually much easier to deal with, and might not involve such a dramatic change as you are anticipating when you are seeing it in its entirety. So they're just my tips on hiding and what you can do to mitigate that. Now, obviously, this is just part of the steps to becoming more confident. And if you have any questions about any of this, then you can email me, debbie@sunbeamconsultants.co.uk, and look out for the next video, which is going to be all about when we are hypercritical. I hope you enjoy this video and that it was helpful for you.